So let me tell you a little bit about the brain. I don't want to go into too many details about this, but this is important when it comes to how we experience stress and how we show up with the best energy possible. There's 3 different parts of the brain. It's called the tertiary brain system. You can use your hand as a model. I've done that for a long time teaching the BrainWorks program. So the base of the brain, your brain stem, the cerebellum, we often refer to it as the lizard brain. The central part here is the limbic system, which we sometimes refer to as the mammalian brain. And then the top part, the human, rational, logical part, is the human brain. Now, this is absolutely critical because there's 2 ways that we process information. One is top down and the other one is bottom up. And we spend a lot of time talking about how to change top down processing, which is think differently, think more positively, think about what matters most to you. And that may be helpful, but it won't be helpful if at the core of your brain you've got high activity and you can't use the energy resources needed to put that information to good use. So here's what I mean. If you were to look at a brain scan and you were looking at these 3 parts, where we see stress experience typically is at the base, at that lizard brain, or in the central emotional part of the brain. And when those 2 areas are highly active, it pulls the energy, it pulls the resources from that human part of the brain, and we aren't able to think logically and rationally. And what we see with chronic stress over time is that that part of the brain actually builds and grows. The amygdala starts to get bigger. It starts to become more sensitive to stress. It starts to be more and more reactive. And so that prefrontal cortex area that we need to think logically actually starts to decrease in size. Most of the ADD that we deal with nowadays is not hardwired, born-in genetic ADD. It's an adaptation of the brain to a state that it's been in for an extended period of time that no longer has the ability to bounce back. And having worked with financial advisors, entrepreneurs, successful CEOs, most of them have developed ADD patterns because of this underlying chronic stress happening at the base of the brain, detracting from the energy of the prefrontal cortex. Here's the good news. Here's why I wanted you to have an illustration of that, is because if you know that that's what's happening, if one system, your emotional system, is on high alert and your rational system is on low alert, all you have to do is switch it up. And we know very specifically what does that. In fact, you probably already know what does that. How do you calm down the emotional center? You do things like breathing exercises, meditation, experiencing joy, gratitude, play, humor, all starts to decrease the activation of the amygdala. How do you increase activation of the logical prefrontal cortex? Exercise is by far one of the best, especially aerobic exercise. If you're not already doing aerobic exercise every day, you're missing a chance to get your brain into the optimal state and light up that prefrontal cortex. Other things that do it are things that you find enjoyable and exciting and adventurous, curiosity, asking the important questions. Social connection is also one of the most important. And it's why I think for all of you, this topic is so critical, because teens, you have a built-in prefrontal cortex benefiting system. If you're actually using social support and connection within your team, you actually have one of the best buffers for chronic stress already built in if you're using that effectively. You can be part of a team and not actually engaging in deep social connections with those people. So I'm going to give you practical tools on how to engage with your team to deepen those social connections, decrease activation of the amygdala, and increase that logical, rational, human part of the brain.